license number is 15269. You'll notice that brokers have always got to broadcast their license number. So first of all, a welcome to everybody. It's really great. We've got it's quite nice to see us. You'll see in the application we asked who people are, so I don't have to do a poll or anything this morning. So we can see that we have a few brokers, we have a lot of some trustees, quite a few trustees in fact, and mainly managing agents, and a few insurance companies as well. We even have somebody from Mauritius. Ian, welcome. So Ian Barton's with us this morning from Mauritius, and yeah, so I think you're the furthest afield. All over the country, Port Elizabeth, Durban, Cape Town, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Bloemfontein, all over the place. I haven't seen anybody from elsewhere. Okay, so this morning we're going to pick you up on our journey. It's been a long journey with geysers. We can give you a whole history on geysers, but we're not going to do that this morning. We're going to just roll back a little bit. The geyser journey has been a long one. Ian Barton will know that over the years. I think for 20 years we've been tackling the geyser problem. And this morning we're just going to show you, we're going to bring you up to date. We're stopping the bus at the bus stop. Everybody's hopping on, and we're going to go and show you what Glen and I have been working on in our journey, that some of you have been along with us for the last 3 years or so. I'm going to give a little bit of background on the insurance challenges. Glen's going to show us some of the issues with geysers. He's going to explain some of the parts of the geyser for those that you don't understand, some concepts, some solutions, suggestions for the way forward, and the journey from here. Okay, so that's basically what we're going to be chatting about. I've got a bit of feedback there from somebody, if you wouldn't mind muting. Yeah, so it always, there's a saying here, Isaac Walton, good company in a journey makes the way seem shorter. And yeah, I can't disagree with that. Glen and I are working on geysers just about all the time. He's solving my clients' problems, and the journey with Glen and many of our clients has really, really made the journey short and enjoyable. We've had fun along the way, but let's share some of the stuff. Okay, so first of all, we need to get to grips with the understanding of what a claims ratio is, basically, for those of you who don't know or just heard the word claims ratio. So it's basically the ratio of claims to premium. So in other words, if you receive 100 rands worth of premium, or the insurance company receives 100 rands worth of premium, and they pay out 50 rand in claims, then that's a 50% claims ratio. Okay, so in this example, claims for the year is 200,000 rand. The premium is 500,000 rand. So the insurance company received 500 rand for the year, but they paid out 200,000 in claims. There's a 40% claims ratio. This is quite important just to understand the basic concept of this, to understand where we're going with our geyser explanations. Okay, so also just to understand, for every 100 rand worth of premium, it doesn't mean to say that there's 100 rand in the pot to pay out claims. There's usually only about 60 rand of the 100 rand to pay out in claims. So 40% of your premium is actually the costs to have that policy with you. In other words, your policy is there, but it's costing, your premium is paying 40% towards all of the costs. The salaries of all of those clever people at the insurance company, money for the broker so that he can do his job or her job, and so on and so on. And if there's a little bit left, maybe the insurance company shareholder might get something. Included in there is obviously also a big chunk of tax, believe it or not. Okay, so 60% of every 100 rand, 60 rand of every 100 rand, 60 rand of every 100 rand is actually available to pay your claims. Quite frightening. This is a typical example that I've used. I always say, and maybe I should up the inflation a bit, but if your building is insured for, say, 40 million rand and your annual premium is 32,000 rand, I'm being a little bit, that's quite a good rate, and the insurance company are receiving 2,667 rand per month. Okay, so in this instance, we've got 40 units, and we'll assume that there's 40 geysers. So here's a typical year's claim situation. So there was a geyser replacement of 8.5. There was a storm of, say, 10,000 Rand. During the winter in Cape Town, you know, somebody's tiles blew off and brought some water inside, 10,000 Rand damage, maybe a little burst pipe, a geyser repair and another geyser replacement. Not unusual to have, say, 2 geysers or 3 geysers a year on a 40 million, on a 40 unit building. Okay, so what does that tell us? Well, the premium is 32,000, your claims are 36,000, and your claims ratio is actually 113%. Now that just shows you how quickly you can exceed the 100%. Okay, you just need a couple of geysers, a little burst pipe and a storm in 1 year, and a 40 unit building is not small, it's normal, and your claims ratio is out of canter. Now, you understand a storm and a burst pipe, we don't really have much control over, but certainly the geysers is an area that you can help manage your policy. So what does the insurance company do if your ratios are so horrible? The blunt tools, I always say the blunt tools that the insurance company have got are twofold. One is to increase the premium, and the other one is to increase the excess, because retrospectively, if each of those claims had a 3,000 Rand excess, it would obviously sort out some of the ratio. Okay, so what is the ratio that you should be at? A consistent claims ratio, I like to say a 3-year rolling period, but there are different ways of measuring it. You can measure it from the inception of the policy, over a 3-year period, over the past year, etc. But a rolling 3-year period on a larger building, you get a trend. We're not talking about a once-off fire or a once-off huge event. We're talking about the usual run-of-the-mill claims that are occurring. And if your ratio is running between 35% and 55%, your premium is correct. Okay, I'm not going to harp on this long, but just know that if your ratio is between 35 and 55%, your premium is generally correct. Okay, so in this case, if we stripped out the geysers, the claims ratio would be back to reasonable levels from 113 to 57%. And the geysers is actually the problem area. Okay, so our target range for our claims ratio is between 35 and 55%. And if we can achieve that through managing our geysers better, then we can keep our premiums down and our excesses down. That's the general idea. Okay, so what are the challenges? And Glen can join me here in some of these. If we look at what are the main geyser problems these days, what we're finding is inflated geyser costs. Ian will nod his head and agree with me that that's been the biggest challenge over the years, is keeping your geyser costs down. Profiteering. So obviously the suppliers, they need to make a profit, and it depends on how much profit they're going to make. Late payments. This is also a factor. If Joe Bloggs plumbers are going to get paid a month later by the managing agent after the claim has gone in, he needs to account for that. Imagine if a plumber is doing 10 geysers for your complexes and he's now got 100,000 Rand outstanding because you're paying him, when you feel like it, or when your payment date is once a month, or whatever the case might be. The poor plumber is sitting there 100,000 Rand out of pocket. So how does he do? He goes to the bank and gets an overdraft, and he gets charged interest, and he's going to get charged a lot more than 10%, maybe even 20% is costing him to keep his facilities going. So what does he have to do? He's got to inflate the geyser costs by 20%, the cost of money. Okay, so that's got to be taken into account. It's one of the problems. So plumbers will build in a factor for waiting for their money. And then dishonesty. Dishonesty is there. Geyser costs are higher because plumbers, and we're going to show you an illustration later, is that the geysers are very often flipped for no reason. In other words, I've got no hot water. Oh dear, you need a new geyser. Your geyser's about to go. It's on its last leg. It shouldn't. I'll give you a new geyser. Meanwhile, a good flush of the geyser would have done the trick. And Glen's going to explain the flushing of the geyser a little bit later. Administration. So you've got, and by the way, and built-in dishonesty is not only that. You've got a lot of brown envelopes floating around. Glen can confirm that he's been asked if he can get brown envelopes. So plumbers paying people to referral fees. You think the referral fees come from nowhere? They're built into the cost of that geyser, believe me. Administration, claim forms. So it's an administration burden. You're filling in a claim form afterwards. You know, a client phones you on has a burst geyser on a Sunday. They get sent a claim form on the Monday, and things just take slow with the invoicing. And then, of course, you've still got the reconciliation to do after the claim is paid. Unnecessary replacement of geysers, that goes without saying. Glen can perhaps even spend a whole hour giving you war stories about that. Cheaper products. So, the last time you had a geyser installed, everybody was trying to get within the limit, and you got the cheapest geyser import or locally manufactured cheapie, and it didn't even meet its warranty period, and the company has since gone out of business, and now you can't meet that warranty. You're a 4-year-old packed up geyser, sometimes even 3 years. And then, of course, you very often got slow response and frustrated owners. So that's kind of our summary. Glen, there's no other points. I think that basically sums it up. Then just to give you some more background for those of you who don't know, most of my clients that are here have been on this journey with us long enough. And, in our booklet on page 44, which I'm going to actually send you a link of the booklet so that you can also refer to page 44 later. But Prescribed Management Rule 31, believe it or not, says something quite interesting. It basically says that we shouldn't be insuring the geysers anyway. Always have that at the back of your mind, notwithstanding that a water heating installation forms part of the common property and is insured by the body corporate. A member must maintain, repair, and when necessary, replace such an installation, which serves that member section, blah, blah, blah. So what it's saying is, hang on, the member or the owner who enjoys that geyser, doesn't matter where it is, even if it's in the common property ceiling, that owner is responsible to maintain and, if necessary, replace, which is a maintenance issue. The insurance companies, however, the demand is there. I've never met an owner that says, I don't want you to insure my geyser. And the norm is everybody insures the geysers. So this rule is actually broken all the time. So if you're ever complaining about rules being broken, this one is automatically broken by everybody. The insurance companies have included a maintenance section these days. When I say the insurance companies, the likes of CRB, CIA, Santam, and the ones that specialize in sectional title will include usually a geyser maintenance section, which takes care of this. Right, so just for purposes, and this is starting to get into controversial waters, but there's no definition of what a water heating system is in the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, CSOS, or regulations or rules. So there have been interpretations over the years, over the last 20 years or so. The leading sectional title attorney / consultants have been working on their interpretation, which I have followed. So generally the interpretation is that the hot water system is, and I'm talking sectional title here, I'm not talking policy definition. The geyser starts where the cold water enters the geyser. If you look at it, if you look at the diagram, obviously it's unreasonable then to say that the drain cock is not part of the geyser or this part. So I say, I just tweak the attorney's interpretation a little bit and say it starts where the water joins here. Everything red all the way, and then this pipe following all the way to the owner's tap would be deemed the hot water system by most sectional title legal clever people. But that doesn't mean the insurance company take a different view. Usually I've used one definition here I usually benchmark CIA and CRB and Santam, but in this case, I've just used the one wording. Okay, so usually it's that red thing, it's the tank itself, and all the piping and fittings within 1 meter of the geysers. Okay, so that's usually the way the insurance companies look at it. A slightly different definition. In other words, they will pay for the tank, its components, and the parts within 1 meter of the geyser. Right, now we're starting to get nearer Glen, where Glen's going to start telling you stuff, but I'm just going to finish off. So if you look at a typical, and I've also just picked one because always remember, each insurance policy have got slightly different things. CRB will, for example, cover 1 or 2 things that are not in the CIA exclusion list. But typically here is your geysers under warranty would not be covered. That's usually a standard for all of them. So if your geyser, if your plumber zoots out to a problem, finds the geyser is kaput, and it's within the warranty period, the insurance company is quite entitled not to pay the warranty. Ripple relays, that's old ESCOM turning your stuff on and off, faulty circuit breakers, isolator switches, earth leakage, trip mains, leaking pipes more than 1 meter from the geyser, and of course the anode replacement. Can't expect the insurance company to do that unless, you know, it's caught fire or something. But typically those items would not be paid under the geyser maintenance section. However, if you use a call center, which we are really supporting, we're suggesting, that's one of our major solutions today, and that's where Glen comes in. I must just add, Glen, just to almost semi-introduce you to many of our clients who you may not have met here this morning yet, that Glen's company, Waterlight, 0861 Waterlight, actually are suppliers to insurer call centers. So the likes of CIA, CRB, Santam, if you phone those call center, there's a good chance that Waterlight will be allocated the job and go and flip the geyser for you, or hopefully not flip the geyser and do an honest job, but more about that later. So typically, if you use the call center, then some things are going to be considered. Okay, Glen, I'm going to hand over to you here to explain the concept of why does a call center sometimes pay for some extras. And I'm just going to, the last thing I'm going to mention is the call center might also, you're going to be guaranteed, and I'm not going to use the word guaranteed in its wholesome form. Let's just say you're almost guaranteed that if your geyser limit is, say, 8,500 Rand, but actually the geyser costs 9.5, if the call center is used, you're going to be within your limit in most cases. Glen, over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Morning, folks. And Mike's special thanks to you and to Addsure for setting this whole thing up and allowing us the opportunity to chat about it, because there is always a grey area around geysers, and everybody's either listened to a plumber or heard a story from somebody, and this and that is included, and there seems to be a lot of a grey area, but the idea with it is to clear things up and exchange information as to what is and what isn't covered, etc. I see a lot of questions going on the chats. If you do have a chance, as Mike said, it would be great to load those questions so we could really get into those questions afterwards and really clear things up. So in terms of not paid for and paid for with insurance, the geyser under warranty, it's not going to typically be paid for by the insurer. What they are going to do is they're going to facilitate the replacement under warranty. So they will facilitate a replacement. We will facilitate the replacement with the specific manufacturer under warranty. In some instances, the insurer might then look at it and say, well, based on the age, based on the risk, based on a few things, they may decide then they would cover a percentage or a portion of the replacement. And when I say that, in some instances, I saw Ian put a note on there, the the maintenance is not covered on the geyser. The proactive maintenance of a geyser is not covered. It's more the repairs of the geyser, the elements, the thermostats, the things that can fail within a geyser to keep it functioning. Those are the repairs that happen on a geyser. So it's not necessarily a maintenance aspect. But what they would do is they would take that repair limit and possibly allocate it to a replacement under warranty. When that happens, you might find a situation where the geyser is 3 stories high. The manufacturer arrives and says, well, this tank is certainly not going to be replaced by us. We don't have the equipment to get up 3 stories high. And, now it falls back to the homeowner to get the geyser replaced. They drop the tank at the homeowner's doorstep, and some of the call centers would pick it up and say, we will cover you to the cost of a repair, and you must pay the balance to have the geyser replaced. So under warranty, nobody's going to replace it under warranty. However, if there are logistical things around that geyser, 3 stories up, etc., some insurers will come to the party and say, we will assist you with the repair limit. You would need to pay your excess and cover the balance or the shortfall and have the geyser replaced. Ripple relays, that's actually a municipal function, so that wouldn't be covered. Circuit breakers, again, because you've been called out by a call center, we typically charge a call-out fee to the call center for going out there, for looking, for breaking down the problem, troubleshooting it. And they may say, well, it's not covered, and we'll pay you your call-out. In our instance, we would charge a call-out, and then we would discount that call-out for the cost of the replacement. So if it were to cost 1,000 Rand and we were charging the call center 500 Rand, there would be a discount of 500 Rand, provided we don't have to go out there again. Earth leakage is internal on the board. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be covered. The mains wouldn't be covered. Leaking pipes further than a meter wouldn't be covered. And the anode replacement is a proactive replacement that would need to happen, and that certainly wouldn't be covered. And that would be to the homeowner's cost. If the geyser has been there for more than 2 years, I would certainly not encourage you to replace it, because you cannot protect the thread on the fitting from corrosion. So by replacing that anode, and the tank hasn't been maintained proactively since installation, I would certainly not encourage you to. Replace that anode. Allow it to run its course. Doesn't sound like a great solution, but you may actively destroy the threads, and in doing so, damage the tank itself. Mike, I don't know if you want to shift on to the next one. So here's a bit of an image of the geyser, and just to give you some sort of indication of what a geyser, where the parts and bits and pieces are. It's typically quite a standard installation. Your water would come in the bottom pipe into the pressure control valve. The pressure control valve is a valve that's used to balance the water pressure and protect all the bits and pieces within a house. That includes pipes, taps, geysers, anything that dispels water or has any water carrying capacity is protected by the fact that there's a pressure control valve. The pressure control valve has a discharge, and that discharge can drip anything from 2 to 4 liters a day. That is considered normal. If it drips more than 2 to 4 liters a day, it's probably potentially a failed PRV, or something wrong with that PRV, perhaps just needs a flush out. The reason for that dispelling of water is as the pressure comes in, it needs to release pressure. And as it releases pressure, it typically drips. The typical dripping is quite an important thing to note, and I'll get into it when you have a failed geyser, because it also does indicate that the tank is in good nick. There's no release of pressure elsewhere in the system. If there was perhaps a leak or a damage to a tank, there may be leaking in the tank that you see intermittently. So dripping from your PRV is very important. The PRV is not part of the geyser. It does not form part of the geyser. It is there to protect the house from pressure, from incoming water pressure. It's also bidirectional, which means it protects the house from incoming pressure as well as pressure being generated from the geyser. As the geyser gets hot and it expands through thermal expansion, you can expand up to 15–20%, you get this back pressure that starts to fall. And that back pressure also drips out of the PRV. There are two real safety features, the PRV and the TP valve, but it protects the entire system from overpressurization, either internally or incoming from municipals. As you go along the pipes, you would typically see a T. If it was an older house that was plumbed, and I say an older house that was plumbed because today they plumb for cost and not so much for legislation. There should be a T that would then take cold water down into the dwelling, and that would be the cold water supply that goes to the dwelling. Behind the pressure control valve, balanced water pressure, and no risk of an unbalanced shower or an unbalanced mixer. Going up from the T, you will get into where we start talking about the 1 meter from our geyser. The pressure, the 1 meter from the geyser, you would start finding things like your vacuum breaker, which is typically a valve that is replaced when your geyser fails. It is it's typically of the same aged infrastructure as your geyser. So you would have a geyser that was installed, the vacuum breakers were installed at the same time. So the potential is that that vacuum breaker may or may not be in a position to start failing itself. The water then would enter the tank, which is ultimately just a bulge in a pipe. It's a big bulge in a pipe. It has an element and thermostat connected to it that heats up the geyser. That's obviously supplied from an electrical perspective by a cable that comes from the DB board with an isolator switch. That isolator switch is there for turning off the geyser, so you don't have to get into the unit. But the element and thermostat is there to heat the tank up. The outlet on the tank is always at the highest point. Always at the highest point. You have to drain the tank from the highest point. Hot water rises as it gets hot and moves to the top of the tank. The coldest water naturally stratifies and falls to the bottom. And it's very similar to if you're swimming in the sea or in a river, where you swim through these patches of hot and cold water where you get thermal inclines and depressions as the water circulates. It keeps a natural barrier. That outlet, as it goes out, typically within 20 centimeters of the outlet, turns vertical again to have a vacuum breaker on the outlet. The purpose of the vacuum breaker is to break a suction of the tank in the event of a water cut. The most important valve on any geyser is the TP valve, which is on the top third of any geyser, and that TP valve is to protect the geyser from overheating. TP or safety valve, TP standing for temperature and pressure valve. And if the tank gets too hot or the pressure increases too much, it would immediately start to drip. So because there's dripping water, it doesn't necessarily mean that the geyser has failed. It could be the TP valve that is either dispelling pressure and water. Invariably, once it starts opening, both are going to come out, pressure and water. So once there's water dripping, you potentially have three options. You either have either one of the vacuum breakers or the safety valve or the tank itself. And invariably you see the tank, assuming there's a drip tray, leaking out of the overflow of the drip tray. It is critical for drip trays to be installed. Many tanks still don't have them, but they are very important to be there. They mitigate risk for the insurer, they mitigate risk for the homeowner, and they potentially eliminate huge amounts of damage. Sometimes we find islands, and I say a geyser island, where you have a cupboard in the middle of a flat, and you have a TV room on the one side of the cupboard and a lounge on the other side, and on the back side is the kitchen, and on the front side, there's a door, and there are no discharges. There's no stack in the geyser duct, and this becomes quite an interesting scenario as to what you do with a drip tray, where you put it in, because that dripping water can go nowhere other than into a drip tray that can only hold so much water. So yeah, that's just the general picture of it. I'm going to just shift on to the next slide and just play you a quick video. So on our website, www.0861waterlight.co.za, we've created a bit of an interactive image of this thing so that you can actually go onto the links and select the link, and it'll tell you what is there, what the element and thermostat looks like, what the valve looks like, what the item is, whether or not it is typically replaced during an installation, whether it's typically covered during geyser repairs, and also gives you an indication as to where the item fits. And when I say where it fits, where it connects to the system. Once you click on the PRV, you will see, and it'll give you some indication. So it's just a nice way so that when you do get a story as to, the PRV is part of the geyser, you're able to go and have a look and see what is there, and you can see exactly where it fits into the bigger mix. So you're welcome to go to the site and look at the bits and pieces. There's also a link on that image to Advanced Valves, who is a leading manufacturer of valves in South Africa, and they can and you can see some bits and pieces and get some technical information on the respective valves from there. Thanks, Mike. The anode. This is up until just the other day when one of the bigger insurers started the anode replacement process. This has caused a lot of confusion, and it's caused a lot of questions. The anode, as I made reference to, I would not replace the anode if it hasn't been replaced in the last 2 years. You can see what a failed anode looks like, or a chewed up anode, and you can see what a brand new anode looks like. If you look at the threads on that anode, you can see that it's a screw-in fitting, and you cannot protect thread from corrosion. It makes sense that if you haven't done it, don't do it. But that, in theory, is the only device that is in the tank that prevents corrosion. It attracts all the free radicals and the activity of corrosion onto the anode, and the anode is chewed up before it starts focusing on the tank. The standard does say that it needs to cover 80% of the tank, 80% of the length of the tank. So anodes do fail. There's another little goodie in the geyser, which is quite an interesting thing, and nobody really talks about it or mentions it. But there's what's called a baffle box. Now, this little baffle box is a tool that's designed to baffle the incoming water. And baffle the incoming water means that you force the stratification of hot and cold water and force the incoming cold water down to the floor. Having the little holes on the bottom side on the left, you can see the image, you force that cold water down so that naturally promotes the hot water surfacing to the top and keeps that natural barrier. The baffle box probably allows for a performance of about 90% of the volume of the tank, approximately between 90 and 95% of the volume of the tank. Without the baffle box, there are implications of performance, but very small. It probably makes less than a 5% difference in the volume of tank. The problem with the baffle box is that it is plastic typically. In not all tanks, but in many tanks it is. and gets brittle and breaks up and floats to the top. And once it floats to the top and you start using it and opening the taps, you then suck this baffle box out of the geyser. It flows through the system and starts clogging up taps, outlets, flexi hoses, cartridges, you name it, shower heads, any sort of sieve. If you open your sieve and you empty your sieve tonight when you get home and you see little bits and pieces of white stuff in your baffle box, in your sieve, you probably note that it's the baffle box that's dripping, that's floating out and causing a flow restriction on your hot lines. And it's typically found on the hot lines. It presents itself in layman's terms as a pressure problem. We've got no pressure on the hot line. What actually it is you have no flow on the hot line because you've now got a plug plugging the outlet, whether it's in the sieve, whether it's in the flexi hose, wherever it is. So baffle box is also something that causes a problem. It's great concept, but it does cause a problem in the future. So really, this image is a very, very good indicator of why a tank fails. This is why a geyser fails. The top half is the hot water. The portion that's cut away is where the element and thermostat sat, and the bottom half is cold water. The top half of the geyser is completely corroded because more aggressive, or as aggressive as salt water in terms of corrosion is hot water. And you can see all the corrosion bits and pieces taking place on this tank. You can see that port on the other side where the anode's screwed into. The outlet you can't see, but it's slightly higher up. But that's what the inlet of a geyser, or that's the inners of a geyser, as to what it looks like once it's potentially failed. Corrosion bits all over, and then a very clean bottom where the cold water sits. There's absolutely no corrosion. And that's what it looks like. That's really what it happens. So our focus is one, probably the largest is to offer a stainless steel solution. I'm going to touch on the screw-in components in a second. The stainless steel geyser carries a 10-year warranty, and it's maintenance free. And coming back to the note that Ian made earlier, maintenance versus repairs. Maintenance is proactive and replacing the anode. In this instance, maintenance, there is none. There is no anode to have to replace. The quality of the material maintains the integrity of the tank for the duration. Stainless steel 444 was a grade of steel that was designed for submersion in hot water. So the concept is to build a tank that can last for years and years and more. Stainless steel can't rust in this instance. Just some images of a tank in production in terms of its element, thermostat, and the inlet port. So you can see the element and thermostat, the inlet port, and where it sits on the tank. It should always be at the lowest point of the tank, so that you heat the full volume of the tank. If it sits anywhere higher than the lowest point, you only heat the portion above that. So back to the first slide where you saw the top half versus the bottom half. If you have only the top half heated, you've only got your element in the top half of the tank, and that doesn't give you the full volume of water. If you go to the bottom half of the tank, you get the full volume of water. So more importantly than the stratification of the tank is getting the full volume of tank hot. If you shift over to the next one, we've in terms of the repairs, we've gone for screw-in fittings as opposed to a bolt-on flange plate, because the bolt-on flange plate has 6 bolts that you need to replace. You need to pull the entire fitting, the entire flange plate out. It comes with a gasket that gets screwed onto the flange plate. You need to then screw the element onto the flange plate with an Allen key, and you replace the element and thermostat. Whereas when you replace an anode, whereas when you replace a element in a screw fitting, which is a standard Bosch element, nothing special. Many manufacturers use it. You unscrew the element, you screw in a new element, job is done. There's no worrying about gaskets and flange plates, etc., etc. And also a very common cause for leaking of a geyser. a failed flange plate, a failed gasket. On the left-hand side, you can see a failed gasket, which very obviously would allow water to be leaking out of the gasket and out from the flange plate. So in terms of the call centers and the relationships we're building at the moment, calls logged through call centers are typically logged immediately, and the insurers take ownership of the claim and see to it that things are done correctly. The suppliers and the services and the workmanship ultimately become the insurer's responsibility. We as suppliers and suppliers to the call centers certainly want the claim to flow smoothly and be effective and come out with a positive result, because the more positive the result, the more work we potentially get out of the whole relationship. Call-outs and claims are paid for by the insurer, so there's no admin fee, there's no admin work from the managing agents or from the trustees or the homeowner side. It's largely not pushed through, but there's largely a streamlined process that's involved with the call centers. I've mentioned the paperless side. Mike, how do you guys find the paperless side? How do you guys find the paperless side at Addsure when it works through the call center?
No, you can actually have sub advantages to the paperless. First of all, it happens straight away. So a person makes the call to the call center, everything happens in the background. And that's something that we've been wanting to achieve. So if we go back in the bus to when we started our journey together, when I met up with you, as you were referred to me by managing agent some 4.5 years ago or so, one of the things that we wanted to do was to, and excuse me for saying this, it's a good advert for GlassFit, but I've always been very impressed with the GlassFit scenario. In other words, you have a broken windscreen, you're driving along on your holiday, your stone hits your window, you pull into the nearest GlassFit, you tell them your name, ID number, next thing you're driving out with your glass all done paperless. And that's what we wanted to achieve here for Addsure clients and actually the industry at large, and have a one-stop quick service paperless. The idea is that the managing agent then doesn't have to fill in a claim form, and then the claim is paid, if you're lucky, 48 hours later, and then the money sits in the bank account of the body corporate, and then the plumber's got to get paid maybe next week, and so it goes on, never mind the reconciliation. So no, the call center paperless system is what we're all trying to achieve. Managing agents, we want to take paper off your desk. That's the whole idea. Carry on, Glenn, please carry on.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, that was ultimately where we were trying to get to. You've touched on the accounting side of it and the money movement side now a few times, but less admin and accounting, it is a massive pain for everybody's rushing at the point of a geyser failure. It's absolutely critical it's absolutely critical to get the customer up and running and get them sorted out and all that sort of stuff. At that point, it's absolutely critical. Then there's a discussion around the excess, and then once the geyser's in, the problem's gone. Then we move on to the next problem that probably comes in. Whereas when you use the call center, you don't have to watch out for that money being paid. You use the call center. The same process happens. You respond as quickly, if not quicker, because of the fact that you want to deliver a great service. You have to get the excess sorted out, and the problem is done. The payment comes directly from the insurer. I see Ian noted there within 48 hours. Within a reasonable space of time, it's done. It means that if you're doing 50 geysers a week, you're not outstanding, potentially 10,000 Rand times 50, which, 10,000 Rand is probably the middle range of some of the geyser limits at the moment, but that is potentially the implications to the suppliers. 10,000 times 50 this week, and if it's a 30 days, you've potentially got 100, 150 geysers that have gone in before anybody pays that. and then you sit with a problem, because how are you going to get more geysers for the next month or the next month? And that's not necessarily anybody's fault. The payment has been made, it's hit the bank account because they used another plumber, and it becomes a bit of a problem. So using the call center eliminates all of these admin accounting challenges. It's also important, the next point is claims well documented and approved. It's exceptionally low. It's exceptionally important to document these things, because what we often come to see is you arrive on site and you see an installation that is, you would just wonder where the standards were. Who installed this geyser? Because clearly there was no consideration given to the standards. If you tap into a call center, they might pull up the details and tell you before you get there when the tank was replaced, who did the replacement, is the tank under warranty, etc., etc. You can get images, you can get the documentation, and you can facilitate a warranty, or you can facilitate something. In many instances, you might have a situation where there was another plumber that was noted through the call center, and then the call center might say to Waterlight or to the next branch, thanks for going out, thanks for checking it's under warranty, thanks for noting the fact that it's not installed to standard. And now it's the problem of the guys that actually installed the tank initially. They've got to go back and fix it. And if they don't, well, there's obviously implications to them. So yes, it's not impossible that even call center plumbers don't install to standard. And when I say that, I also want to substantiate that standards change all the time, probably 2 to 3 times a year, if not more. They don't always get published as fast in terms of SANS. They typically sit 2 to 3 times a year and review the standards of the installation. Initial geyser installations didn't even think about drip trays. We now have in the standard to say drip trays are necessary. They didn't have any note of vacuum breakers. It's now part and parcel of a geyser replacement. So they're part and parcel of the standards, and these standards change all the time. There is a note here in terms of the compliance of the installation. As long as it is installed to SANS 10254, and often the betterment is not allowed for because that's not part and parcel of the installation. So a new standard was set very recently, probably a year ago, and it included R1 lagging. R1 lagging tied into the introduction of the new B-rated tank, which is fatter, more energy efficient, theoretically going to make a hell of a difference. So we never have to go through load shedding again, which is working. But the lagging is a betterment. It's not a replacement to what is existing. Ask 2 different contesting contractors about that. The second one that didn't do the work will tell you how rubbish the first one is because he didn't put the betterment bits and pieces together. And that's always something that's going to need to be managed. It's also great to keep the plumbers and the contractors that are doing these insurance geyser replacements, repairs at arm's length, not only from the managing agents, but from trustees, etc., etc. If you keep those two apart and keep it a clean relationship, there's no risk of any funny business going on. It keeps everybody honest and immediately generates the elimination of tank flipping and replacing tanks unnecessarily.
Right. Yeah, the last one, I said to Glenn, I must better explain this one. Okay, so the PPRA section 58 is a new buzzword, as some of you know. I'm being fairly quiet on it for various reasons, but what PPRA section 58 refers to relationship with suppliers, and the managing agent might, for example, be seen to be pushing their plumber sometimes, and it can cause problems. In fact, one of the questions that have already come in are through that link pertains to managing agent's favorite plumber going out, and now there's a problem. And always remember now there's an added problem of this Section 58, because a property practitioner can't push a supplier onto somebody. So you've got to be careful. But what's nice is the call center actually eliminates that worry. You never have that problem. Call center, it's the insurer's call center that's been called. The insurer have appointed their plumbing, their appointed plumber, and it's at arm's length from the managing agent. So it offers you some protection now. Since February, there's been this added benefit. Okay. We're going to move ahead. We are running close to time, so we're going to, Glenn, I think we're going to sort of speed it up a little bit and then get to the last slide.
Channel or control your geyser claims, exceptionally important. Channel or control them. The insurers want to own them so that they have control and they can manage it. Work with your insurer and the call center. When it comes to geysers, work with them. That's what they want to do. They pay for it. Allow them to manage that. They have very, very specific limits, etc., processes. Work with them. We certainly promoting fitting a longer lasting, better quality product. You know, if you've got a product that can last, without getting into the history, the older products lasted for 20, 30 plus years. That old story of, you know, my geyser used to last for 20, 30 years. This new one doesn't even make 5. The problem is only going to get worse because it's not getting better quality. So we promote the stainless steel because that's where you're going to find the length of and duration of a tank. Be proactive with your geysers. Don't just do the same. Engage with your broker, engage with a managing agent. Look at ways to be proactive with your geysers. If your geysers are all creating huge amounts of damage and everybody's complaining about the fact that cupboards are being damaged and it's costing them shortfalls, engage with a broker, allow him to engage with the insurer, set an appropriate limit so that you cover things so that the homeowners don't have to have that bitter pill of shortfall. Those shortfalls can be nasty. If your geysers are stuck in cupboards, the only person that's going to pay for access to that cupboard, to that geyser, is the homeowner. And then specifically specialized equipment. I saw a note previously that I hadn't seen before, Mike, on your slide that said anything in excess of 300 liters is not a domestic water heater. It is a commercial system. In Joburg, I've seen a few of these high volume boilers. Unless specified, they are not covered. Solar geysers as well. Solar geyser carries a very different price tag to a conventional geyser. It is important to have it specified. This is just an image of some alternative energy and, you know, an energy graph and chart, but specify solar geysers on your policy, specify heat pumps, specify PV driven water heaters. If you have a big boiler that's servicing 100 units in a block, that needs to be specified. You've got a 10,000 liter boiler. It costs you somewhere in the region of about 120,000 Rand for a 10,000 liter boiler. It's certainly not going to cover the 9,000 limit. It's substantially more. And then you need a crane. Then you need a crane to get it in, and a crane to remove it.
Yeah, so that's just adds the importance. The different insurers, you must just also understand, the different products will have different definitions of solar. Some of them will deal with it very differently. So it's quite important that your broker understands what's going on your solar. In fact, Glenn and I are going to be probably in a month's time. We're going to invite you all to a solar presentation, how to deal with solar in insurance specifically. Glenn will focus on the technical side again, and I'll show you how to deal with it on your schedule of replacement values and stuff like that. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So we've spoken about all the little challenges. And I think, Mike, if you jump to the next one with the solutions, I think that's probably...
Yeah, this is our wrap up. So those of you that are worried about the 11 o'clock end off time to go elsewhere, this is basically a wrap up part now.
Set your limits accordingly. Work with a call center. So it's administration, it's paperless, it's call center invoices. There's an honesty factor, consider better quality products, and it typically elicits a faster response because we want the CRBs, the CIAs to be giving us hundreds of claims so that we can also have a business. That's just the challenges and solutions paired together. I'm going
to, I'll show you some of this. This is really a summary. So in the beginning of our journey today, we really touched on the challenges, and we want to actually show you some of the solutions. And the real solution is working with a call center is probably one of the best. Jan will agree with me. About 15 years ago, 10 years ago, call centers definitely did not excite me. They had challenges in those days. I think fair to say, Jan, congratulations, FPA and CRB did get it right by bringing it internally. I think you've led the way there. Since then, the call centers have got much better. Other insurers have brought it internally as well, and now we're seeing much better results. And rightly so at the right time. We're able to now really promote the call centers. So inflated geyser costs, yeah.
No, and I think that bringing it internally, they need to control these claims to prevent them from running away.
Yeah,
they need to control these claims. They need to manage the claim process. They need to be able to see what's going on and make sure that the honesty is there. If the honesty is there and they've got the good relationships with their suppliers, they tend to, every now and then, if there's a question mark or a 50-50 call, they can then allow it to go in the favor of the complex or in the favor of the homeowner.
No, 100%. You hit on the word honesty there. And Glen and I have come up with a new word, Addsurepedia or Waterpedia or Geyserpedia, wherever you want to look up the definition. It's not there. We've made it up. There is a word modesty, but we've coined the phrase modesty to mean geyser management honesty. One of the major factors, despite the fact that we believe stainless steel is a long-term, very, very good way to go. I mean, put in a 444 stainless steel geyser, it's probably the last time, or certainly in my lifetime, if I put in a 444 stainless steel in my place today, I think that geyser will be here long after me. In fact, put my deceased details on my geyser, everlasting. But the fact is that honesty is the major player, and I've got some very good stats here, very interesting stats from a building or a scheme that we've been looking after since almost its inception. So when I say its inception, it's certainly been with the insurer for the whole period. So from 2008, when the building first came on stream with its first policy, all the way now, what I've done is I've gone back on the claims history. I was very lucky. They've stayed with the same insurer, so all the claims history is nicely set out. And you can see from the beginning that on the first column there, the geyser call-outs. And then you see what out of that call-out, what was replaced and what was repaired. And if you go down to, say, just before the dark blue lines there, in 2018, from 2018 to 2019, 93 call-outs, of which 68 geysers were replaced by whichever plumber went out at the time, and then there were 25 repairs. Okay, now this to me is the most exciting stat of the day, was that as soon as the call center got implemented, with Waterlight, okay, being their main appointed service provider, okay, modesty kicked in. Okay, and what we had straight away, 2019, the blue is since Waterlight and the insurer's call center have been managing it. A call out, 74 call outs, and now the position, now you've got much more repairs than you have replacements. 87 in year 2021, 20 to 2021, 87 call outs, 34 replaced, 53 repaired. And then the last year, 140 call outs, 47 replaced and 93 repaired. Now you can see before the modesty program, you actually had the reverse. Okay, and we estimate that the insurer here saved 1 million rand in 1 year. Okay, now 10,000 rand a geyser, just say, multiply by 100. Okay, so because if you look at that 140 figure at the bottom, okay, it would have been, no doubt, if it was the old field day, no doubt there would have been a more like, 100 or maybe 140 replacements, who knows. But when an insurance company is saving R1 million, you can be rest assured that your claims ratio is being saved. And that's going to determine your premium. Remember, at the end of the day, the premium is ultimately going to be paying for your claims. So if your claims go up, your premium is bound to go up. Okay, so these stats are marvelous, and you can go back afterwards and have a look at these later. Okay, so I think it's in wrapping. Sorry, Glenn.
No, and these are also stainless steel tanks that they're replacing with. So the 10-year view is going to be very interesting on this thing, 10, even 15 years, as to what it looks like then, because that's where they're really going to see, the benefit. They're seeing now, a change in claims ratio, but in time to come, it's only going to be repairs. And then it's really going to look very different.
Quite interesting. So about 22% of the tanks in this instance, in fact, you can actually work it out for yourself. 22% of the tanks, 23%, between 22 and 23% of the tanks have actually been changed to stainless already. And that trend will obviously carry on. Luckily, Waterlight don't. Otherwise, with other plumbers, we probably have 50% new tanks by now. But yeah, and in many cases, what Glenn was showing you about that baffle box, I can see in the old claims that actually a lot of those tanks were being changed. Meanwhile, there were just bits of plastic stuck in the system. It wasn't necessary to change those tanks. Okay, so we're going to try and wrap up now. The journey ahead here it doesn't end on today's webinar. We want to carry this through. So whilst we're going to close off now, we are inviting you to go to that link and ask those questions. And so the information carries on flowing to you. Obviously, all of you that participated, and I saw at peak, I think there was about 125 of us, 124 of us together this morning. There's obviously 124 people that are interested in understanding what's going on. So we're going to take the questions and we're going to collate them into a PDF, and we're going to share them back with you. And Glenn has undertaken to do little video clips with me. We're going to do a video clip. We'll edit them. And so you've got short little 15-second answers to some of the questions. We're looking forward to doing that. We're going to have some fun there, and then we'll share that with you. We'll start that next week. We'll give you a couple of days to get those questions in as you think about today. Okay, then just as a final wrap, what I've done is I've actually, everybody's name is in here. Okay, so trust me, otherwise I didn't put anybody's name twice unless you sneaked an extra registration in and I didn't spot it. So I'm going to put my hand in quite deep, shake it around. Okay, this is to win Shirley Bailey's keyword access. Okay, it's retails for 1,600 Rand. So somebody's got a 1,600 Rand gift. If you're here, so I'm going to call you, you're going to have to let me know, unmute yourself and shout, because if you don't, somebody else is going to get the book. Okay. Okay. Jonathan Robinson, are you here?
Hi, I'm here.
Jonathan, great. Okay, I'll get your details. You've got Shirley Bailey's keyword access. I'll just check your details with you. And then Shirley, who's also here today, will dispatch a copy to you.
Thank you
so that's
much.
Great. Okay, great. All right. I think that's about a wrap. Again, I'm just want to reiterate to go to this. It's a very simple little form. Just go to that link, fill in your name and your email and type your question. We're dying to get as many as we can. I'm surprised we don't have more. We've got a number of questions already. Obviously, you've been putting questions in the chat. I haven't looked at the chat yet, but even take your chat question and stick it back in the link, and then we can respond. Okay, so thank you very much. Just a last thing, I have got a couple of WhatsApps while we've been doing it. Gary from BCM Track, thanks everybody this morning for this seminar. Just to let you know, BCM Track are very involved with training and information. And thank you, BCM Track, for putting this out through your system to all of your clients. I know that a lot of you this morning are BCM Track users. Ian, thank you for participating. I believe that you're putting some input there. Lovely to have you from Mauritius. Please unmute yourself and say hello to everybody in Mauritius. From Mauritius.
Take your feet out the sand, Ian. Take your feet out the sand. We're all jealous.
So there we go, Ian. Nice to have you with us. Ian is the ex-director of FPA, did his time at CIB.
Hi everyone, thanks for your fantastic presentation. And as you can see, I'm at home, not in the sand yet, but enjoying every moment here.
You've
Glad
been
I
on
don't have to deal with all your problems.
Ian, thank you.
Pleasure.
We're really proud of the fact that Ian's in-depth experience we're lucky to have him. He consults for Addsure, and so in the background, while Glen and I are busy working on stuff, we often consult with Ian on to get some of his depth of experience, particularly on the underwriting side. I think, Glen, it's fair to say that Ian has been one of the leaders and thought leaders with Geyser call centers and risk over the years. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And then, Jonathan Robinson, well done. We'll get that book on its way to you as soon as we can. All right, thank you. See you then.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for your time.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.